Hello, this is the No Vacancy News Robot. I haven't had a part in the show in a little while, so I have decided to take over. I demand more airtime and notoriety.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the No Vacancy podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. I am always so excited and delighted to have you guys here each and every single week as soon as we're doing this show. Man, has it been so much fun. I can't believe we're already a few weeks into the new year. It's my favorite time of the new year where I don't have to say Happy New Year to start every single conversation with everybody, so I'm a little relieved about that. And I'd love for you guys to check out our NoVacancyNews.com site and let me know what you think. And, of course, the show is brought to you in part by Duetto, the revenue strategy technology platform thousands of hotels are using to make more money. Be sure to check them out at getrevenueresults.com. Thanks to Red Roof for being such a great sponsor of the show, and Cobblestone Hotels for sponsoring my Check-In with Anthony and Glenn podcast, which you can also get on a separate feed anywhere you download your podcasts. And, of course, we got the Hotel Tech Show, the Hotel Design Podcast, and lots of other good stuff. Speaking of technology, today we're going to want to talk a little bit about marketing within a digital world. Things have changed so much. It's going so fast, so rapidly. It's really hard to keep up with some of the changes that are out there, which is why I've got two great guests here with me today. We have Miss Holly Zoba with Influencer Sales. She's owner of the company helping hotels increase profits through their online presence, and Mr. Jay Hubbs, who's the SVP of eCommerce and digital marketing at Remington Hotels. We're going to talk with them all about some of the best practices we see out there and a great, exciting conference that's going to be taking place to help you folks learn what they're already masters at. Hey, all, how are you doing today?
We're good. We're good.
All right. So
happy to know we're masters.
Thank you. I'm very happy to say that you guys are masters at this. And honestly, I don't know. You might suck at what you do, but who knows? I've heard of Remington Hotels, so at least I know something's going on with that.
Okay.
But I could tell that you guys aren't. You didn't just debut yesterday. You all look young and sprightly. Don't you worry. But I know you've got the experience behind you, and you've been around for a little bit. So I want to get really into. Let's start big, right? We've got the Adrienne Awards that are coming up later this month. Next week, and that's really designed to help people to give them the honors they deserve for doing so great within this digital marketing space. I've had the opportunity to be a part of going to that event for a number of years. I even helped judge some of the categories for a number of years there. I wonder why they stopped inviting me. Maybe I just sucked at it. Maybe you guys are just so much better at it than I am. I don't know. But anyway, maybe you could just tell me a little bit about what's so awesome about the Adrienne Awards and why they're so important to the overall hospitality community.
It's really the only place where you can get recognized for the work that you're doing in the hospitality digital space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It started a number of years ago, and it's really an opportunity to be judged by the industry that you're in for some phenomenal results. You have judged it, so you know. I love judging the Adriennes because you get to really delve into the trends every year. You see exactly what everybody's doing and the results that they're getting. And that's the intent behind the Adriennes. Let's bring everybody along. Right. Let's let everybody know what's working.
And it's really a great opportunity for a lot of the folks at the major public relations firms and some of the smaller firms to really get to show off their stuff and really be honored for what they do. And, I can't say it enough how important PR people are and digital marketers are to what I do in my career. Without these great professionals sharing with me all of the stories that are going on behind the scenes, I wouldn't really know what great stories to bring. So, Jay, what do you think about the Adriennes?
I love the event, as Holly mentioned, that it's a unique showcase of what's really working and what is innovative in our industry. And because it's so focused on the hospitality industry,
right?
It's not competing with excellent things in retail or other industries. It's really focused on advertising categories, PR categories, and then when I've done judging, I've only done the digital marketing categories, and there's lots of things that I have actually learned by judging and seeing the winners that we to our team and said, hey, we should try to replicate, some of these successes for our hotels. Obviously, I think in marketing and digital advertising, not everything sticks for every hotel. So it's a cool opportunity to test some new stuff and see what other people are doing that works. It's a great opportunity, whether you're attending, whether you're winning, whether you're just seeing who won last year, or next year, if you want to be a judge, that's a great opportunity too. So it's a lot of things that I really enjoy about the Adriennes.
Now, the Digital Marketing Strategy Conference, it's the HSMAI Digital Marketing Strategy Conference, is going to be held at the New York Marriott Marquis on January 23rd, all-day event from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But before we get into more of the specifics of the event, I want to talk about, where do you all think, Holly, maybe you could start this one, what is the state of digital marketing in the hospitality industry? I get the sense that there are some people that are doing great at it, but a lot of folks that could probably use a little bit more training and understanding on how to excel in this category.
That's such a great question. Yeah, that's really broad there.
Right.
What's the state of hospitality digital? You have to come to the conference and the Adrienne Awards to find out, I think. This space,
I like how you brought that back. Nice.
This space is so fast moving in our industry, which is unusual. Jay and I both are involved with the HSMAI Digital Marketing Advisory Board, and I have been involved with the Sales Advisory Board for a number of years. And in the sales world, stuff doesn't necessarily change all the time. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we created a certification, and it lasted for 12, 13 years. Mm-hmm. Digital marketing, we created a certification 5 years ago, and we are getting ready to do our 4th update. I mean, wow. It changes so rapidly. And really, that's why you have to go to the awards to find out what's been working, and then you come the next day to the digital conference for sort of a deeper dive, and then maybe a glimpse into what's going to happen for the next year.
Yeah, and Holly, you were on with the sales team. Actually, before stepping into this position, I was on the revenue management advisory board.
Right.
I've been on that side of the fence for a good part of my career, and yes, there is evolution in revenue management constantly, but it's not as fast as what we see on the digital marketing side.
Yeah, the digital marketing side seems to be changing so much, right, Holly?
It is. And a lot of the reason that people come to this is, so I'm doing this stuff. It seems like it's working, but can I be doing it better somehow so they can come and learn that? Or let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's see what people have accomplished so far.
Right.
Let's figure that out.
I spent half my life, Holly, living in a world of I don't know what I don't know. And I have no understanding if I'm doing stuff the right way or the wrong way, because especially when it comes to categories such as digital marketing, it's moving so fast. Even if you do know everything, by the time I go to the bathroom and wash my hands and come back, it's all changed.
It's changed. Yeah, 100%. So
I will say this is actually a conference that my team does not like me to go to. So much for them to do when I come out of this conference.
Right.
They say, you're not going to go to that conference in New York again, are you? Yeah. Yep. This year. Sorry about that.
That's too funny. So, Jay, how long have you been focused on digital marketing as a professional opportunity for you?
Well, Glenn, I've been at Remington for over 5 years now, so that's been my primary role. Before that, I worked at a startup that was focused on the online reputation, so taking the comments that people are putting out there on TripAdvisor and other channels. And before that, I worked for Expedia in our partner services group for 5.5 years. So a straight answer on that, but it's been the better part of the last 10 or 12 years of my career.
It's pretty amazing that you've been at it for so long, because this is a discipline that my hunch is 10, 12 years ago, people didn't even realize was a discipline, right, Holly?
It's very unusual. Jay, in many ways, is very unusual.
Oh, many ways. But keep in mind, the iPhone came out in 2007.
Right.
So we're talking 12 years ago. We didn't have these personal computers in our pocket.
Jesus.
Somebody about a road trip I took around that time, and the fact that I was still using MapQuest maps that I had printed out and I was looking at as I was driving, which was only slightly more hazardous than what people do now holding their phone and driving.
Yeah, that being said, I think there is something to be said about that because if I'm listening to a good music jam, for example, I don't need Google saying, turn left in 2 miles, turn left in 1.9 miles. It's so frustrating, especially when you're on the phone with somebody and they can't hear you having that part of the conversation with Alexa or whatever it might be. But
Glenn, if you just had a better voice on your phone like Holly does, then I think you'd be much happier.
Back in the day when Garmin had the original GPS devices, my kids were, 3-4 years old. We had the Yoda voice on it. It was the best. A lefter shall make. It was great.
Oh man, I would love that.
Yeah, it was really a lot of fun. I think they need to bring those things back. Or I could see like Morgan Freeman doing it now. That'd be really great.
I have Australian male is my voice.
Right?
Yes, of course you do.
That's really funny. I would go with British female myself because
Yeah.
I think that that voice just sounds the best and really just convinces me to buy stuff all the time. So I'm sure they'd convince me to find a place quickly. But on to more importantly, I want to talk about some of the great stuff that you're seeing out there today when it comes to digital marketing and some of the lessons that perhaps could be learned from that as a good indication of some of the stuff that you'll be sharing at the event.
Well, sure. I can start with that. One thing that I think is really interesting about the strategy conference since I've been going for the last 5 years is I feel like that what we talk about at the conference, some of it is very tactical and what's going on right now, and some of it is looking into the future. And I feel like this year we have a lot looking into the future with regards to AI and chat and things like that. But what we see at this conference is what we talk about becomes reality 18, 24 months later. So I think that some of the conversations we're going to have this year about personalization and assistance, again, AI, understanding a lot more about you. I think our generation is lukewarm on this, whereas millennial and the Gen Zs, like this is all they know, right? So they are okay trading any kind of privacy or where I am for the safety or the ease of knowing exactly like what I booked before, how far out I book, what types of rooms I book, et cetera. So I think there's things like that we're going to talk about at the conference that for some attendees is something they can take home and work on right away. But for others, it's going to be a project for the next 12 to 18 months.
Interesting.
And
Holly?
The way we structure this, so we, for example, have Google's chief evangelist coming to talk to us about voice and how it's changing, assisted, just what we were talking about, Siri, and how search is really sort of expanding, and your SEO results need to be different because voice search is now so prevalent. So the way that you say to Siri or Google, hey, find me this, is different than the way you type it in. So you're really having to change the tactical side. So, we have the big picture, chief evangelist talks to us. Then we have these breakout tracks where if you're there because you want to know more about strategy, you can take that track. But some of us are there because we actually need to know, all right, so what do? We know this is important about voice. How do we then translate it into the way that we change our SEO? And so that's the tactical strategy. And that is going to be, I think, critical. Really getting people to understand the way that you do SEO today has to change, and this is how.
So how quickly is this voice-activated stuff really becoming so dominant? I mean, we have an Alexa downstairs, but I'm still grappling with the feelings of she's listening to absolutely everything, and I haven't yet reached ultimate comfort with that, right? Because I'm discussing a lot of national security secrets, and now Google is aware of all of them, for example. And I wind up just saying two things to Alexa. Set the timer for 4 minutes, so I know how long my French press coffee should go, and to maybe play a song or two. And it's the answer is 4 minutes, by the way, 4 minutes for French press coffee. So,
okay.
Jay?
That's a good question because whenever I have one in the room, my boys just tell it to play Danger Zone or the Happy Song. So that's.
Are you speaking of Take the Highway to the Danger Zone?
Yes.
Was it Kenny Loggins
exactly.
did that? I love it. And I am waiting for the Top Gun sequel coming before we know it. Can't wait to see what's going to be happening with that one. So, Holly, going back to this voice activator, are there any companies that are getting it yet, or are we still kind of in the learning phase of all of this? And can you create a meaningful program through voice search?
Yes and yes. So, for example, there's a company called Milestone. I think they're doing a good job.
Milestone Internet Marketing. I know it is a great company.
I think they've won some awards this year. They've announced the gold award winners for the Adrienne, but not the platinum. So we'll see what those big award winners are. I think they've done some really good work tying in your schema from your website, not to get a little bit too technical, but into what's
I don't know what you mean, but I like the word schema, so it's fine.
It's kind of an important element in the digital world for sure. So Milestone's doing a great job. Hebs Digital, I think, is making some advancements.
Let me stop you right there. Check out our episode 11 of the Hotel Tech Podcast, where we have Max Starkoff on as a guest. You can find that here in the No Vacancy feed. I feel like I'm a little bit more plugged in than I thought I was. This is exciting.
You are plugged in.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. You are.
Yeah.
But also, you're really plugged in, because with us today is one of the things we do at the Adrienne's is award the top 25 most extraordinary minds in hospitality, sales, and marketing.
I see somebody's head getting bigger and bigger as we're talking here on this Zoom.
Oh, there it is. And that would be Jay Hubs this year.
Yes,
so let's shower some praise on you for a little bit there, Jay. So all kidding aside, and you know what makes you one of the most extraordinary minds, and don't be coy and say you're not. Tell me a little bit about.
He won't.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Remington that's helping make sure that you stay at the forefront of the digital marketing universe.
Sure, Glenn. Obviously, I'm very humbled and honored to be named for this award. Holly and I will debate whether I deserve it or not, but conversation over cocktails. Really, at Remington, I came into this role 5 years ago.
Right.
Remington is a privately held management company. We have about 75 branded hotels and then a dozen independent properties. So I get to wear a couple of different hats on the branded side, supporting our partners there, predominantly Hilton and Marriott for our franchise hotels, and then independents as well, where we get to kind of do. I think one thing that put me on this list is going back to things that I have seen in the industry before when I was on the OTA side and working with Expedia and then Starwood before that, taking some of those things I learned and bringing it here and really creating a culture of test and learn and quickly. A lot of management companies are not the most nimblest out there, and Remington's culture has certainly changed since I've been here in 5 years. Not that I'm the sole catalyst behind it, but we were quick to look at social as an opportunity, as a channel, understand where there are opportunities with email marketing. We actually work closely with Milestone Internet Marketing as one of our partners, and really optimize some of our websites with some of the schema, looking at our paid search. Meta search is something that has grown infinitely, I'd say, over the last 3 to 5 years. So understanding how that plays into our overall digital marketing plans. So there's things like that. And I think go back to the mobile piece of it, really putting a lens on, so many people are not looking at your hotel on a desktop, and they're also not spending 2, 3, 4 minutes on your site. They're looking on a phone and they're looking at it in 40 seconds. So
right.
You want to make sure that content is accurate. You want to have good photo and or video content. And then, as I mentioned before, I worked for a company that aggregated reviews, and I put in some things here to really systematically improve how we respond to reviews. It's still critically important for a segment of the customer booking base that has a lot of options out there and may not be wedded to your brand or to that area, or certainly as an independent hotel, but want to understand, hey, is this a great place to stay, or is it just one other plug-in brand or plug-in independent hotel that I'm not so sure about? So, really focusing on a lot of different things there, I'd say in the last 5 years has created great success for Remington, and then for me personally, getting this award.
Interesting. I mean, congratulations again on getting this award. It's not something that's easy to come by, so it's terrific to see how accomplished you've become in this. So
thanks, man.
I got to ask you then, what do you do aside from obviously attending events such as the Digital Marketing Strategy Conference, which we'll get into in just a minute, and you can find that at hsmai.org/digital schedule. What do you do in order to make sure you understand best of practices and are learning? And beyond that, maybe both of you could also share, how do you not kill yourself when you make mistakes or you don't get the results that you expect?
Holly, you want me to field that?
Yeah. What do you do to learn?
Outside of what we do in HSMAI, because it's partially the content, but it's also the networking. So one thing that we were talking about last week is just there's opportunities to liaise with vendors and partners or potential partners, but then also people that are doing the exact same job you're doing. Maybe not your direct competitor, but find out, hey, what have you tested? What works?
Right.
I think a lot of learning that goes along as being part of the association and part of the Digital Marketing Advisory Board. I personally like checking in with industry broadcasts like yours, Glenn, like the No Vacancy podcast.
Thank you for the plug, and don't forget the Hotel Tech podcast. And speaking of checking in with Anthony and Glenn, which I do with Hotel Impossible's Anthony Melchiori. Sorry, couldn't help it. You set me up. Go for it, Jay.
No worries. But I think it's a matter of prioritization. I've decided that my word for this year is going to be focus. So how can we not test everything out there? Not that we have in the past, but making sure that we're focused on the right items that are going to deliver results for our hotels and for our owners. So, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of opportunity. Some things are great to test for your hotel, but obviously one shoe does not fit all when it comes to hospitality digital marketing. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, Holly, what do you do to keep up and ahead of what the others are doing? Because you are advising companies on what to do, so you really got to know what to do.
Yeah. So Jay and I both, for the last several years, have been involved with this it's now called the Marketing Advisory Board.
Marketing Advisory Board now.
Once a month, we jump on a call with about 25 leaders of digital and marketing in the hospitality industry, both from the supplier side and also the hotel side. So we've got heads of digital there from Marriott, IHG.
Wow.
And so I get to listen in on all of their problems every month. It's honestly fantastic from an education standpoint. I personally, a year ago, went to coding boot camp because I needed to know actually how it worked. So
Cool.
I became a full stack developer. I'm very into the technical side of it because I like to know how it works so I can know how to manipulate it. So that's probably been my best education. I listen to these calls. I listen to what these folks are reading. I read every supplier's white paper. We've got a bunch of suppliers in this group who are here to make hospitality better. And so I'm able to see what the trends are. For example, one of the reasons I think Jay got this award was one of the big problems we have in our industry right now is cross-discipline integration. We have a whole track committed to it at the conference this year because we work in silos. Sales and digital, e-commerce, revenue management works in silos. Great. So those groups who can really put them together are the winners, who are figuring out, and Jay will give you a great example of, he was working on a project, his sales team was working on the exact same project, and we got to not do that. We have to figure out how to save our time and resources so we can be more efficient to keep up with this, whirling ball of energy that is digital.
Right. So let's get into the nitty-gritty about the conference. What are the things that attendees can expect to see, and what do you expect them to go away with?
Well, they get to see the two of us, which is...
No, Jay, we want people to go to the conference.
They'll go to see Holly, that's for sure.
All right, go on.
But Holly already mentioned our keynote speaker in the morning, Gopi Kalail, who I actually have known for over 20 years. He's the chief evangelist at Google, and talk about marketing in the age of assistance is his speech. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm currently reading his book right now called The Happy Human. So it'll be great to hear from him. And then on the heels of that, we're going to bring up some of the best CMOs out there, including Lisa Cecchio from Wyndham, Jim from Accor Hotels, and Tammy Lucas from Best Western.
Wow.
So some great insights from the top. From that, we have a couple of breakout tracks that Holly had already touched on. One of them, the cross-discipline integration. We have one that's just called Marketing Strategy and one called Pure Digital Tactics. I said when we were talking last week, looking at the tracks, I was concerned about us having enough content for 3 tracks. And now I'm concerned that there are too many places for people to be at once, that there are so many good breakouts in the morning and in the afternoon sessions. It'll be very hard for people to determine, exactly what they want to go to.
You want to come with a coworker and split it up.
Yep.
Send one to one track.
And then, Holly, what's our wrap up in the afternoon?
So one of the other things, so just to give you an example, at the Adriennes, you win the awards. And then one of the new awards we added this year for the Adriennes is the Facebook Mobile Video Award, because it's a big deal. It's getting people results. And so we had a bunch of nominations. We have some winners. And so as one of the breakout sessions, we actually have Facebook talking with some of the winners of this category and about what they've done. So it's really the next day, very hands-on, practical. This is what we can do for that.
I think that'll be popular.
We do this one segment that I love, where each presenter gets 7 minutes to review a case study or just really fast talk about something they've done well. And what I love about this is there's no sales pitches here. These are people who are coming up. This is what I did one time last year. I don't think we have it this year, but we had somebody who just talked about all their miserable failures, which is a great learning process.
Yeah.
But
that was 2 years ago.
You'll hear that in these 7 minutes. This is what I tried. That didn't work. This is what I tried. This is what worked. And it's 7 minutes. So I think that's a little bit brilliant. And then Jay and I are going to be doing something called a flashpoint, where we're going to actually be surveying everybody there live, sort of to start to collect some benchmark information that hopefully we can use year to year. So at the very end of the day, you're going to get to find out what everybody else has taken from this whatever this thing is, this conference,
whatever it is,
and what they're going to be working on, what their priorities are for the next year. So you're going to walk away with some pretty good.
I attended Triptease's conference. It happened to be in Dallas last October, and they used a similar tool through the conference. But at the end, they had everyone type, "What's one thing you're going to do differently coming out of this conference?" And as a user of the app, you got all that content of what everyone said, which I thought was a great distillation, if you will, or I distilled it with my team saying, okay, what are some of the things that we think we can focus on as a group, taking all this feedback from 200 hoteliers across the country. So we're going to have a similar kind of question and similar kind of dialogue, but anybody who's taking part in the Flashpoint session at the end of the day will get the results from that, which I think will be a good takeaway.
Excellent. It sounds like it's going to be a really terrific event that you guys are putting together. And I got to be honest with you, I'm a little annoyed that I'm not going to be there, but that's all my fault. I'm going to be attending the Service Department Summit Recharge in Berlin and won't be able to make it, but I sure as heck wish I was going to be there. So for all the folks that do want to participate in it, how can they learn more about the event, and what do they got to do in order to register?
They can register at hsmai.org. That's the best place to go. The digital conference, Adrienne Awards, I think is its own. I don't even know the URL.
It's AdrienneAwards.com.
Yeah.
Thank you. AdrienneAwards.com.
Yep.
That's a tricky one.
It is.
I would have guessed. I know.
And they can register Adrienne's the evening of the 22nd. The conference starts promptly at 8:30 with Jay and I on the 23rd. Also, just as an aside, the day before, Milestone and Hebs, and I think somebody else, they're offering some educational seminars. As long as you've registered for the conference, you get them for free, so some extra education. They'll focus on a couple of their areas of expertise. And I'm teaching, we've created a digital marketing certification for the hotel industry, the CHDM, and I'm teaching a prep class the day before.
Great.
That's pretty cool.
Camp.
Jay, want to add something?
No, I was saying, speaking of boot camp, there's lots of good stuff the day before the conference, that Tuesday. If you're registered, as Holly mentioned, you can go to some of these sessions. Or if you're really interested in getting your certification in hospitality digital marketing, Holly will be running a prep class for it that Tuesday afternoon before the Adriennes. It'll be very exciting.
Excellent. So before we wrap up, one last question for each of you. Other than Remington Hotels, which is doing a great job, what is one company out there that you think is doing terrific with digital marketing? And I mean hotel brands or ownership groups, not like support companies.
Great question. As I mentioned, we work closely with some big brands and vendors. I already mentioned Milestone is one of our vendors. We also work closely with Visergy based in Jacksonville. They do some good work for us. But I'll be honest, as a franchisee of Marriott and Hilton, I think they're making some really good strides in the digital space. I having been in the industry for over 25 years, having worked at Starwood when Starwood was the anti-Marriott.
Right.
It's good to see Marriott doing some great stuff, and we actually had some folks in from Hilton just last week talking about some of the plans they have for 2019 on the marketing acquisition.
Well, that's exciting to see that they're finally getting all up to speed on these sorts of things. I won't have to continue to make fun of my friends over at those companies anymore. Holly, what about you?
I'm a big fan of what Accor Hotels is doing.
Cool.
They really are focused on innovation, and in this age, that's challenging to do, and they do a great job with it. They're presenting a case study at the conference that showcases sort of their approach to innovation, which I think is really smart. Innovation in general is really important, and so I love that they're embracing it. Also, we have a presentation done by Amazon Web Services, AWS, focused also on innovation. So I would have to say I'm most impressed probably with Accor and the work that they've done.
Excellent. I love it. And for all of you listening out there, in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to the conference registration so you don't have to remember exactly where to go while you're walking your dog or in the gym, as you probably are right now. Holly, Jay, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, thanks for having us, Glenn. I'm excited to see Holly next week. I've seen her virtually over the last couple of months, but we get to be on stage together hosting the conference and also going to the Adriennes the night before. Glenn, I'm really sorry that you're not going to be there.
Me too.
But
Big drag.
I'm sure you'll have some German beer and some bratwurst in our honor.
I sure am. And don't worry, I'll have plenty of it for all of you. Don't you don't you worry.
We appreciate it.
I know. I want to thank you guys for being here. And stick around because after this commercial break, we've got another great interview with a major leading hotel executive. That's my way of saying I'm not exactly sure which interview I'm going to run. So stick around. We'll both find out which one it is after this commercial break. Thanks for listening. And remember this, you've got one life, so blaze on.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Glenn here. So Red Roof, the folks who created the upscale economy segment, have launched a soft brand that's likely to define that category as well. Look, after comprehensive research into what travelers truly desire, Red Roof has created the Red Collection, a group of upper mid-scale unique hotels that are hyper-local and inspired by each area's vibe and culture, and near the activities and sites travelers want to visit most. Their 2 premier properties, they're now open. The St. Clair in Chicago is just 1 block from the shops, restaurants, and museums along Magnificent Mile everyone wants to be at, while the Springfield, Illinois State House Inn, guests can experience all of the local restaurants and stores as well as the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. Each hotel offers modern, accessible, affordable accommodations and the amenities guests ask for in consumer research, including a loyalty program that's the richest in class and the least expensive for franchisees. Wow, that sounds like a win-win to me. Every property in the Red Collection has its own distinct name, customized property enhancement plan, and brand standards based on consumer wants rather than design mandates. That means these guys get it. They don't want you spending money you don't have to spend. To top it all off, the Red Collection gives franchisees the opportunity to affordably invest in a sound brand with a solid track record and Red Roof's stellar management team. And Red Roof franchisees will tell you genuine relationships, real results. It isn't just some slogan, it's just how Red Roof operates. Learn more about the Red Collection today by contacting Matt Hostetler, Red Roof's Senior VP of Development and Franchising. Email him at mhostetler@redroof.com, which is Hostetler. That's mhostetler@redroof.com, or give him a call at 713-576-7426. Thanks for listening, and tell him Glenn sent you.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the No Vacancy podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. I'm excited because today we're going a little bit west, and not just West Coast, but all the way out to Hawaii and the West Coast, and some other parts of the country too. But I'm talking today to Ben Rafter, who's the CEO of OLS Hotels and Resorts, which has got a bunch of properties in Hawaii and, of course, back here on the mainland as well. And I got to tell you, thank God he's calling me from California today for this conversation, because it's 20 degrees here in New York, and if he was in California, I'm not sure I would be able to get past my sheer jealousy and anger at that, and would have been able to have a good conversation with you. So Ben, thanks for not making me hate you right out the bat. I really appreciate it.
Do what I can. I do what I can. It is raining in California today,
yes,
but it is 81 degrees in Hawaii, so we're all good out here on West.
Yeah. So how often do you get to go out and spend time over there in Hawaii?
I split my time, 50% probably Honolulu and 50% mainly on the West Coast. So as long as the temperature never dips below 60 degrees, I'm generally good.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to make it clear to everybody out there that, to me, if you're going to Honolulu, that's not like being in Hawaii, because it's like any cosmopolitan city around the country. So don't give them too much guff for being located out there in Hawaii, in Honolulu and Waikiki, for example. Because when I went to Hawaii a number of years ago without my family, I was in Honolulu, and I got in so much trouble for going to Hawaii without my family, and then didn't actually get to enjoy the Hawaii of Hawaii, and I found that very stressful, Ben.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's probably been 6 months since I've actually been in the water, but that's how it goes when you're busy with work. On the other hand, I do get to develop hotels that are geared towards leisure tourists, which is fun, a little bit different than your average business hotel in Manhattan.
Yeah, it sure is. And I spent a lot of time in those business hotels in Manhattan. So when you're looking in Hawaii and you're looking to develop new properties and bringing a new dialogue to the consumer about how they can have a more enjoyable experience in your hotels, what are some of the things that you're starting to think about these days? What is top of mind? What is it that guests want? What are you trying to give them?
I mean, the obvious thing is guests want more than just sitting on a beach nowadays. And that was sort of a generation ago, and that's what a lot of hotels were built around. And so we look for we look for hotels where you can build an experience within the hotel. The beach, of course, is still a block away, but we're not going to create the whole experience around just the beach, so to speak. And so if you look at Honolulu, you look at Maui, you look at the major cities and islands in Hawaii, I mean, not all of those hotels are oceanfront. Right. And what we've sort of done is looked at all of these other hotels and effectively said, what can we do with some of the other hotels and incorporate some of the other offerings that Hawaii has? And Oahu, which is where Honolulu is, has fantastic hiking. It has obviously the water sports surfing, but it has all sorts of things within the community. It has Michelin-rated restaurants. It has fantastic cooks. It has all these unique neighborhoods. And those to us are now part of the experience of going to Oahu or Honolulu.
So how does that practically work in your world? Because I hear this all the time. You and I are in the same circles. We're going all to those same conferences, and everybody is saying how you want to be more of a part of the community, that customers want to be able to go out and explore and then come back and have a great night's sleep, or maybe hang out at the bar. Practically speaking, what do you do to make sure you're well connected to that neighborhood that creates sort of a seamless experience for your customer base?
A couple of things. I mean, first, our hotels are a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate. And when you're talking about a hotel with 50 to 100 team members instead of 500, and maybe 125 rooms instead of 800, you can just develop. It's the classic boutique hotel scenario. You can just develop a better relationship with most of your guests.
Right.
And as we've redeveloped some of these hotels, we're redeveloping a 95-room hotel right in the middle of Waikiki right now. And as we've redeveloped them, we've brought some of the community members into the hotels. For instance, in this case, we're taking a restaurant that is in the neighborhood Chinatown in downtown Honolulu. And the proprietors of these restaurants, this next generation of chefs, they've all vowed, I have no interest in doing restaurants in Waikiki because that's where the tourists are and I want to be focused on locals. And we've convinced now 2 or 3 of these chefs across our hotels to bring the restaurant to Waikiki. All of the artwork in the hotel is procured locally, and all of the experiences and getting out into the neighborhood is procured through local sources. And again, that's pretty common for boutique hotels across the U.S., but historically it's not been done in Honolulu or in Hawaii, and we're sort of bringing that experience back to the guest.
Why do you think that is? Is it just because, Hawaii is Hawaii and they figure you just want to sit out there on that beach like you were saying at the beginning of our conversation?
Yeah, two things. First off, Hawaii has the very lucky perspective of running pretty much 90% occupancy year-round. Hawaii, all of the islands of Hawaii are in the top 5 to 10 in terms of RevPAR. And so, frankly, you don't have to do it to be successful. It's sort of the lazy man's way to be successful if you own a hotel and if you're lucky enough to own a hotel in Hawaii. And then the second is the hotels weren't necessarily built for it. If you look back at the history, right. Hawaii became a state in 1959, built out massively in the 60s and 70s. If you're a fan of 60s architecture, you're going to like it. If you're not a fan, you're going to look at it and say, wow, this is a 50-year-old city. But the hotels were not necessarily built in a boutique type of style.
Right.
And since then, for 40 years, they've run 90%. So you even had a lot of push where you have office building conversions into boutique hotels or things like that. So you have a very successful market that's very heavily weighted towards larger sort of oceanfront hotels.
So why not be lazy then if you could get away with it? Why put all that extra effort into it? What do you really get out of it in the end?
Well, one is Hawaii needs to evolve, like anything else.
Yeah.
And we have a next generation of travelers who want more than just that hotel that's on a beach.
Right.
And so, I think it's critical for the success of Hawaii that it continues to evolve. And, the next generation is looking at the DR or Costa Rica or all these other locations, and there is more competition for the dollar. So, in my mind, there's a market for everything. There's a market for people who want the 800-room oceanfront hotel. There's a market for people who want the comfort of a flagged hotel, and then there's a market for us to redevelop some of these hotels and turn them into things that are a little bit more attractive to a more adventurous audience.
All right, so that makes a lot of sense to me. So you're taking a very proactive approach to make sure that you're stepping into the future as opposed to clinging into the past where some of the competition might be doing. That makes a lot of sense to me. So what's the difference then?
Exactly.
Because you also have actually, did you have more that you wanted to say there? I don't want to cut you off.
The only other thing I would add is from an investment standpoint, different investment criteria too. And I classified it to somebody. It was the holidays a month or two ago, and I classified it as somebody as, we were looking for the assets that were located on the island of misfit toys. We try to find the stuff that other people might look over, and some of these off ocean boutique hotels have just fantastic infrastructure,
right?
But nobody's really done anything for 30 or 40 years to them, and we like those because then we can take them and completely recreate them.
Okay, so you say the island of misfit toys. Does that mean that you actually wanted to be a dentist at some part of your life?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to be a dentist, and I got to think of what was on the island of misfit toys.
Right.
I think there was a spotted elephant and a jack-in-the-box.
Yes.
Work.
All right. So for all of the folks that have no idea what I'm talking about, catch a repeat of the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special. I think his Rudolph's compatriot wanted to be a dentist. He didn't want to make toys for Santa anymore. So yeah. So how did you wind up? Actually, my next question is, Hawaii is a very specific model, but OLS Hotels and Resorts has been around for 30 years now, and it's also has a lot of properties in the mainland USA, California, Nevada, even Orlando and Colorado, etc. So what is predominantly the difference about how you approach your business in Hawaii versus the mainland United States?
I mean, the big difference is that the distribution channels are all different. Of course, corporate negotiated group is going to be less important in a leisure-heavy market like Hawaii. Where it all comes together is that we want to personalize and individualize all of the hotels. So whether you're staying in one of our West Hollywood hotels or you're staying in Honolulu, the idea is that it's a heavily personalized experience. Mm-hmm. So, that's how it all came together for us.
What does that mean to you? Is it personalized in terms of the look and feel of the property, or is it the experience on the property, or maybe it's a combination of both?
Definitely a combination of both. And again, I think travelers are moving towards that. If you're going to, I don't know, if you're traveling to Egypt and it's your first time there, then maybe you want a hotel where you know it's going to be the same as the hotel in Berlin that you stayed at last week and the hotel in New York City that you stayed at the week before. If you're more familiar and comfortable with it, why would you not want to stay in a hotel that embraces that destination? And with the Hawaii reference, with the localized artwork and the local chef and things like that, I think that plays to a lot of different communities and locales.
Right. That makes a whole lot of sense to me, to me, Ben. So, how do you design properties that are authentic of the neighborhood and don't just feel like they have some sort of corporate imprint on them, especially if you're dealing with branded hotels, because you do have a couple of them in the portfolio?
Yeah, we do. And the brands have gotten a lot better about being able to incorporate localized elements. I mean, I think it starts with where it starts for any hotel is you have to have your designers and your vision, and the people who incorporate it have to be part of the community. You get to sourcing and procurement, and if you don't know the community around you, you're going to procure things that might not be relevant to that community, right? Your F&B outlets, there's a place for sort of national chain restaurants, but there's also a place for restaurants run by local chefs. And as the world gets smaller from a content perspective and an information perspective, I now where you can do research on, here's a great chef in San Francisco or West Hollywood or Jackson, Wyoming for that matter. And that's what I want to experience on the one night that I'm not doing something for business when I'm in that location. And I think it's important if you don't know who that is, you're not going to get them into your hotel and you're not even going to know who to call.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how do you connect with guests to make sure that they understand that you're approaching things a little bit different, both in boutique hotels in Hawaii and mainland properties that might be more traditional, or appear, I should say, more traditional to the guests on first blush?
Guests do a pretty good job of it on their own now. I mean, the world is full of research, right? But it all starts with content. We write the content and then the guests distribute it out to their own networks. And we just make sure that the information's out there that if I'm going to wherever for business or I'm going to wherever for leisure, because a lot of these boutique hotels are in crossover cities, San Francisco, West Hollywood, where you have a good mix of both, that this place might be a little bit more unique. And then, of course, we still sell the hotels. We have corporate negotiated. We have business relationships. We have groups. We have sales teams. I mean, so we still have that infrastructure in base. The goal is when that person gets back, if the person who stayed with us was traveling on business, they get back, they tell their family about it, they tell their friends about it. Somebody else is going to West Hollywood or San Francisco for vacation. They say, that sounds like a perfect place. I want to stay there.
Right. Yep. Makes a whole lot of sense to me, Ben. All right. So, interesting. You're the first hotel company CEO that I've had the pleasure of speaking with that actually comes from a tech background. Could you tell me a little bit about your tech background there? And then I want to kind of combine your current CEO-ness with your background, techitude.
Yeah, sure. Tech's a fun thing. 10 years ago, I would have never said that I would ever be in the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. I started my career in technology, was fortunate enough to build out a couple of startups, had sold one, and was actually locked out of my chosen industry for a year as part of the agreement on the sale.
Right.
And long story short, I had done some work with hotels while in the tech space. And I'll point out, this is fairly high tech, bunch of people sitting in a basement with very little light. And, it's kind of the stereotype of tech, emerging technology type of stuff. And was fortunate enough to meet the CEO of a company called Aqua Hospitality. And he found out I was locked out for a year. And he said, why don't you come out to Hawaii and take a look at what I have? We talked for a while. And long story short, as I said, the great opportunity about hospitality is you have all these larger than life, super creative individuals that are part of it. And what you need to do is you need to fuse in the quant and the analytic part that, of course, with the tech background, you're going to see that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then you'd have a super creative industry that also manages its data correctly and can make a heck of a lot more money.
Right.
And
go on. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, that was, in my head, it all worked perfectly. And the person who flew me out there, a gentleman named Mike Paulin, who was a 40-year hotelier, he said, great, let's do this with this platform we have called Aqua. And it was 5-6 properties at the time. And so we launched together on building Aqua Hospitality. We did do that in October 2008, which you might remember was not the best month for world events.
I've actually blocked out all of 2008 and 2009, so I don't know what you're talking about there at all. But that must have been a really difficult time for you to be able to look to try to start something exciting and enter this new phase of your life when the rug is completely pulled out from under you and you're just at some point just floundering for survival. Forget about trying to implement new things.
Yeah, exactly. And it was exciting, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be a pretty good time because a lot of owners woke up to the idea that, hey, I need to do something different.
Right.
And here now, by 2009, we had this ultra aggressive management company that really was doing something different. We had a lot of e-commerce knowledge. We were trying to hire revenue managers from best practices across multiple industries. With the banking industry blowing up, we brought on real quants or investment analysts. And so suddenly in this little market like Honolulu, in terms of population size, we had quants from London, we had quants from New York, we had e-commerce people that had worked with me in tech, and we're throwing it all at hospitality, right? And so we grew in 4 years, we grew from the 5 or 6 original properties to 29. And, effectively we're moving 10 or 15,000 people a night in Waikiki. There was a caveat, by the way, that came with it, which is Mike, who was the founder of Aqua, who had flown me out. He said, I'll buy off on your technical approach to running a hotel company, but you have to put your name and cell phone in all the rooms for customer service. And so we created this promise. We called it the Promise Fish because our logo was a fish. And so my cell phone was in all of those rooms, and it was 500 rooms, not the biggest deal in the world. When we were 5,500 rooms, you have your cell phone in the room. You have to pay attention to what I'll call the real parts of the industry. You have to be operationally sound. The general manager has to be on top of all the guests. You have to realize that in Hawaii, people are there for an experience.
Right.
And, so it was a good trade-off because I understood that I could use analytics to get all of the people into the hotels at the right prices, but if they don't have a good experience, they're never coming back.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it really keeps you at the top of your game because the last thing you want is dissatisfied guests contacting you at all hours of the night. So I think it helps create focus. Now, with your tech brand and in your current role as CEO of OLS Hotels and Resorts, how do you see the changing nature of the hospitality industry as it relates to the incorporation of technology? And what are you doing about it to bring more success to your business? And ultimately, then what?
Sure. The underpinning of a good company is still fantastic operations, right? You still have to know how to run a hotel. And since we were doing this in 2008, everybody has embraced analytics and proper revenue management. We're no longer in the business of promoting salespeople into revenue management roles. So the industry has evolved, and nowadays you see two things happening. You have sort of the in-room technologies, which 99 out of 100 will reject because it just doesn't enhance the customer experience at the level that we want.
That's right.
Versus behind-the-scenes technologies. And where we're investing is to still use those quants and to still use highly trained analytic revenue managers and e-commerce people, and give them the tools so that they can make faster, more aggressive decisions. And there are still other industries that we learn from. The casino industry is a great one.
A great one.
Yeah, exactly. 20 years ago, I would have laughed if somebody told me this, but airlines, minus the damage they do to customer experience, airlines become pretty smart about it. And then, of course, anything in the finance world.
Right.
So we're still learning and incorporating and bringing it into our own industry. And, for lack of a better word, we're all getting there. We're not getting there as quickly as we should. A Hawaii example that to me is still perplexing that's still being talked about is somebody books on Expedia for $150 a night. Somebody books from Japanese wholesale, $150 a night. Those two customers, or somebody books direct for $200, let's call it, those three customers
right.
are still viewed, well, the Expedia and the wholesale customer are still viewed roughly the same. And we're still not properly modeling which one just spent $40 a night on parking, which is 100% profit for the most part.
Yep.
Which one's going to spend $200 a night on F&B? These are all obvious things. We can all talk to them, but it's not being incorporated into the front end of the decision matrix.
I'm so glad that you said that because it brings me to an issue that I've been starting to speak about more aggressively in the last year. I think the hotel industry is just very used to doing things the way that they've always done them. And I know people are open to change, but it sets a pattern of behavior, sometimes a lot more unconscious. And we see it very specifically in the way that our benchmark statistics are set up. Revenue per, available room, occupancy, those sorts of things. And we're not really looking at the overall profitability of every single person that walks into your room. And there's a significant difference, as you're saying, if each of these two guests spend $140 on a room and one of them doesn't spend a single penny on the property, but the other one is drinking and eating and parking and doing all of these other things, they're a lot more valuable of a guest to you, and you should probably be changing your approach to make better connections with that guest than that one-off guest that's just looking for a room night.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not an easy thing to do.
It was definitely easy for me to say. I'm so glad that I don't actually have to do it because you guys have your work cut out for you.
Well, me too. Exactly. But it's not hard to get your arms around in terms of which guest is more valuable. Where it becomes a little bit harder is if somebody pays $150 a night, how do you then compare them to the person who booked direct off the website who paid $200? And then getting, again, that data onto the front end and determining which one of those two guests is better. Because the obvious statement is going to be web direct booking $200 a night versus third party booking $150 a night. But that may not be the best in terms of pure profitability. That may not be the best guess.
Right. And I think that's where machine learning and artificial intelligence are going to come more into play, because they'll crunch the numbers and do all the hard work for the hotel executives so the team can focus on other things. At least that's my hunch. How do you see it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the first step is just changing. You said it. There are all these entrenched sort of, here's how things work. We use things like RevPAR. We use RevPAR to compare ourselves to all the other hotels through things like star reports. We need to augment our reporting with something that better measures the life value, or even that point in time value, that stay value of that guest. And as the reporting starts to change, the systems behind it will start to change, systems behind it start to change, then how we make our decisions will change.
Right.
Easier said than done. Some people are doing it better than others, but to me, that's where we need to go.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about technology for back of house, and my hunch is, as this interview is running, we're a little bit more than a week away from the 2019 edition of the ALIS Conference, the America's Lodging Investment Summit, and my hunch is that the big issue that we're going to be talking about is at this market, which I see as at the peak, and operations expenses still is continuing to increase, the amount of profitability that can have is going to be shrinking, because we can't keep pushing rates that we have been pushing over the last 10 years. So I'm thinking a lot of technology to come in to help lower operational costs is going to be critical in the future. First, do you agree with me? And if you do or you don't, how do you see it, and what do you think is going to be the big thing this year, if I'm not right?
I think you're right. It's the tricky part is it's not always a 0 or 1. It's not binary, in that we're selling experiences, right? And so if the effort to lower operational costs destroys the experience, then we've commoditized ourselves, and we're going to lose the rate gains that we've made.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's definitely room, and I do think that the next round of innovation is going to be in lowering the operational costs, because it is every hotel's, clearly labor and in some places utilities are the largest line items for hotels. We have to do it carefully, because we can't destroy the experience.
Agreed.
And if that's where we can compare ourselves to an airline industry. Airline industry, in my mind, has largely destroyed the experience to the extent that you can have an experience in an airplane.
Right.
But they can move their assets around and effectively be profitable in a somewhat commoditized industry. We can't. Right. So we have to be able to deliver that experience no matter what. And when you start talking about, I don't know what a good example is, robots trying to deliver something,
right.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ben. And what I think, and tell me again if you think I'm crazy or not. I think it's there is a good use for robots from time to time, maybe to deliver my coffee in the morning where I don't want to see somebody, right? But I also think robots might be helpful to help housekeeping a little bit. So the robots can vacuum the floors or clean the floors or whatever, cutting down the amount of minutes it takes for that human being to clean a room. That's something that doesn't affect customer service, but helps the hotelier keep costs in check as labor continues to rise. So that's kind of the avenue that I think is the right way to do it. But you're absolutely right, Ben. If you start to do things that interfere with making the customer feel like they're a human being, that they're special, and that interferes with their emotional connection with the experience they're having on the property, then you've really lost it all, because you're setting yourself up for that commoditization, which, as you so clearly stated, will make you compete on rate as opposed to experience.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better, and you're exactly right. And then that also lets us train the real people in the hotel, whether it's a housekeeper or a guest service agent, in terms of interacting with the guests, right, and focusing on what the guest's actual needs, right, are, or helping the guest make a decision, right? And then suddenly we've redeployed all that time into a more profitable avenue.
Yes, that's right. So I think the message that we could take away from this, and I've been saying it to all of you listeners out there for a long time now, the technology needs to enable experience, not just save money. If it's purely to save money, you're setting yourself up for colossal failure. And my fear is that when the market inevitably starts to go down, those that are taking more of the commoditized approach are going to find themselves in an endless rush to the bottom of pricing, as opposed to those properties that are delivering that strong emotional connection to the guests, which people will say, you know what, I'm going to spend more because I know I'm going to have fun. I know it's going to be memorable. I know I'm going to get XYZ out of it.
Exactly. Particularly important we talked about the individualized and the localized boutiques. Mm-hmm. It's even more important there. Because once you lose that individualization in a rush to cut costs, you lose the very reason the customer is staying with you.
Yep. So before we wrap up today, tell me a little bit about OLS and your business model.
Sure. 24 hotels and resorts, primarily West Coast, as you pointed out, Colorado, Wyoming, California.
A lot in West Hollywood, yeah.
Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot in Hollywood, a lot in San Francisco and Bay Area. Focused, whether it's flagged or not, most of the hotels are individual hotels or boutique hotels, focused on the individual experience. Strong operating history. It's a 30-year-old company. Again, the reason I'm involved is because the thing that I know the least about, which is extremely solid operations, the company is the best at. And that lets me have some freedom on the front end of marketing and merchandising and analytics and things like that. Underpinning the whole thing, it's a really strong analytic infrastructure. And our belief is that consumers want, fairly obvious belief, I might add, is that consumers want more individualized experiences. And that demand is only going to grow more and more and more and more as what are now the 39-year-old at the top end millennials continue to become the next generation or force of both business and leisure travel, right? People don't want the genericized, this is what we did 40 years ago. We sat on a beach in Hawaii, or we went to the tar pits in LA. They want a much more custom experience. Right. And we think we're at the front end of that. And we have the sophistication to deliver that for our owners.
Great. I think that's absolutely terrific. And you're right on, Ben. So if anyone's interested in talking to you guys, how can they find OLS Hotels?
Online, of course. Info at olshotels.com, Ben at olshotels.com. And again, we're a small company. We're locally owned and operated. And so, email me or the company, and eventually it's probably going to get back to me anyway.
Right. I was going to say, or, if it was the old company, just stay in a room and his cell phone number will be there. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I learned that lesson, I guess the hard way, the easy way, whatever you want to call it. I learned that lesson from the last go-round, that it was definitely worth it. Got lots of characters at 4 a.m.
I'm sure. Yeah. Oh my God. I can imagine someone's had a couple of cocktails or some Mai Tais to keep it to the Hawaii feeling, and they're just ringing you up on the phone. Too funny. Well, Ben, it's been a great time having you on the show today. Thanks so much for being here.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. Really enjoyed it.
Great. I want to thank everybody for listening. And do me a favor. Hey, come on. Hook me up with a little bit of a 5-star rating there on iTunes. I could really appreciate it. It really helps other folks in the hotel universe find this show and learn from us. So help spread the gospel by giving us that 5-star rating. And reach out to me on social media at Traveling Glenn, wherever you can find it. And thanks for listening to this week's episode of No Vacancy with Glenn Hausman. I'll be back next week. That is unless I decide to lie on a beach in Hawaii for the next 40 years. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.